Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens with the Private Air Media Group. In recognition of Women's History Month and International Women's Day this past Monday, I have two really great guests from the world of science, technology, engineering, and math. We all know as STEM. One is originally from Peru, and the other is from Los Angeles. Both are very accomplished and quite focused on making their marks in aerospace and beyond. One wants to go to space. Actually, the other one might want to go to space too. The other wants to also make significant inroads in the world of robotic systems and all the things related to that. One grew up in the city of Cusco, Peru, a small town near the Peruvian Andes Mountains. And the other grew up practically in the backyard of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory there in Pasadena, California. So this is going to be kind of neat to have both of them on and talk about what they currently do, what they have done over the years, and how they actually became interested in their career in science and technology, aeronautics and aerospace, and all of the things combined with that. So really looking forward to the conversation. Let's start with meeting Jackelynne Silva-Martinez. Jackie is currently a systems engineering and integration lead for gateway programs at the NASA Johnson Space Center. Jackie has 2 degrees from Rutgers University and 2 masters, one from Embry-Riddle and one from Georgia Tech. Jackie has a lot to tell us about all of the studying and all of the things that she's done over the years, and looking forward to that conversation. Jackie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Vince, and glad to be here and be able to share my experience with other college students, high school students, and any viewers that you have. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely looking forward to our conversation. Marlyse Reeves. Marlyse is a PhD student at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. That involves CSAIL, which stands for Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, and MERS, which stands for Model-Based Embedded and Robotic Systems. Boy, that's a mouthful. Marlyse received her bachelor's in aeronautics and astronautics from MIT, as well as her master's in computer science. Marlyse, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
It's great having both of you guys here, and you ladies, and kind of interesting that this is a Women's History Month, and the other day it was International Women's Day, and so this is your month, but you guys transcend, in my opinion, the fact that you happen to be girls, ladies, because what you guys do is just absolutely fascinating and actually brilliant. I'm sure you've been teased and called rocket scientists and brainiacs and all that kind of stuff at some point in your careers. But after reading some of the research background on you guys, I could see why. You guys have really delved into some really great stuff in terms of science and technology. So it's going to be wonderful to talk to you about your world in STEM. Before we get into a little bit more in depth about your backgrounds and how you got into the aerospace industry, let's talk a little bit, starting with you, Jackie. Tell us a little bit about what you do currently at Johnson Space Center, your current position, and what you've done leading up to that.
Sure. Yeah. Currently, I'm supporting the Gateway program. Is the next station that we're going to be building to orbit the moon in support of sustainable missions to the lunar surface. So for that program, I'm in the systems engineering and integration group. I'm the lead for that within the Human Health and Performance Directorate at NASA Johnson Space Center. And I support the human and medical technical authority that we have for the program, where we manage more than 500 requirements that have to do with the human. So we want to make sure that the human is already considered as part of a system. The system should be already known as having the hardware, software, and human in there. Traditionally, these were separated, seen as three different things. So it's a new formal process that we're including as part of human systems integration. So I'm also the lead for the program, and it's a challenging position, and you also asked about how I got there, but I think that starts from back in since I was little, but I think we're going to get to those questions a little bit later, so I'll save that for
no, that's okay. You brought it up, so we can go there for a bit. You are from a relatively small city in Peru, near the Andes Mountains. How does a young lady from there become interested in what you're doing now in space exploration? Although we will say your dad was a physics professor, so I'm sure that had a little something to do with it.
Yeah, it's a process. I don't think there was a one time like, oh, now I want to go and work in space, right? It was different events that were happening throughout my childhood, and as I was growing, that made it more of a yes, this is what I want to pursue as a career. It has started with some magazines that my parents bought in Peru when I was 5 or 6. It was a Sputnik magazine, so they had these pictures of cosmonauts, and I started coloring them. So that sparked the idea of like, I want to be an astronaut, right? When I grow up, and I will say that in the school too. And you imagine people will laugh at that. It's like it's a dream that's very far away from reality. So when the opportunity came to, as I was growing, I was always interested in STEM. So anything that's related to science and math, that's what I was. I was leading or doing activities related to that. And when I moved here to the US, that idea kind of came back. It's like, hey, I'm here. There's more understanding of what's space. Then in college, a professor gave me the opportunity to work with him on lunar structures. And he actually invited me to a conference with him to come here to Houston. So that was the first time that I came here as an undergrad to explain what I was doing in my research. And that was kind of the formal opening of saying, yeah, this is the area where I want to be, that there is not, the idea sometimes is like, oh, to be in space, you need to be an astronaut. No, there's this whole group that has to put everything together, the flight plan, the mission, the design itself that makes those missions happen. So that's how, different events that were happening throughout my life that told me, yeah, this is an area that I want to pursue.
Yeah, so your emphasis has been in the human aspect of it, the human factors and that type of thing. As a matter of fact, I was introduced to you from somebody that also deals with the human factors, and that's Professor Pablo de Leon at the University of North Dakota, who specializes in looking at the spacesuits and that type of thing. What made you move in that direction, and does that correlate also with the fact that you eventually would like to be an astronaut and go into space?
Yeah. So I wanted to do things related to space. When I graduated, I went to work with satellites, still space related, but there was something in me that said, the human exploration was something that I was called to do. So as I started, I did the satellite part, getting to know the systems integration too. So what I did back when I started, I'm doing now, but for human spaceflight. And then going to JPL too, that opportunity came up, but it was also robotics, right? And it was great, but like the human aspect, it kept calling me. So finally I got to come to the Johnson Space Center, and that's what we do, human spaceflight. So I was always getting prepared for getting here and work with the human programs. Chose my master's to be on that, to aviation systems. We're focused on human factors, And I think human systems integration came from learning those opportunities. So I was doing satellite programs, robotics programs, but the common thing among all those programs is the human, right? So regardless of whether those are autonomous systems or not, the human is part of that system. So I was learning things there that prompted more of that attention to the human aspect, and not just the astronauts, but all the humans that make a project work. So yeah, I'm taking the theoretical part that I was able to learn in school to applying it here at NASA now.
Yeah. So that gives me kind of a good segue to Marlyse, because you were involved in the robotics side of things, and then you moved to the human side. And Marlyse, I understand from reading your background that your interest has been on the robotic side, and in fact, what you're studying regarding, for your PhD and everything, and all the things that you're involved in right now are the robotic side.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm a PhD student at MIT. I'm in my fourth year. I'm in a lab that specializes in just sort of how we can make autonomous systems be robust and be very kind of intelligent in very complex and dynamic environments. This includes things like self-driving cars, like manufacturing systems, like household robotics. And the particular thing that I'm interested in is sort of like robotic explorers for space and for oceans and for disaster relief, sort of all those types of different domains. So a lot of my research focuses on how we can make robotic systems able to reason about their environment, learn from their environment, and really be able to make intelligent decisions on the fly as they're operating in these environments.
So we're really talking about AI and how that's applied. And I was reading, as a matter of fact, I usually don't do this, but I'm gonna bring this up for a second and just read a couple of things that are on the website for what you guys do. Let me do that, and then I'll come back to you on it. It says that new generations of sensor-rich, massively distributed, embedded systems are being developed that have the potential for profound social, environmental, and economic change, which is what you were just talking about. These systems include networked automobiles that never fail. I want to hear what you have to say about that. Cooperating vehicle teams that perform search and rescue, you mentioned that, and the humanoid robots that will assist astronauts in space. And I'd like to hear what Jackie's perspective is on it, since she's been on kind of both sides of that. Or the elderly back here on Earth. By the way, when I saw elderly back, I saw back to Earth at first, and I thought, what? But anyhow, the objective of the MERS group is to revolutionize the way in which we create and control these new artifacts. Research in the MERS group concentrates on model-based autonomy, the creation of long-lived autonomous systems that are able to explore, command, diagnose, and repair themselves using fast, common sense reasoning. MERS is working to elevate robots from mechanical creations controlled by low-level scripts with a considerable amount of human guidance to truly cognitive robots. There are three main thrusts to research in the model-based embedded robot systems MERS group: goal-driven interaction with robots, natural human-robot teaming, and robotic reasoning about the environment. So, and then finally it says, when combined, those research topics allow us to create cognitive robots that can be talked to like another human being, can work with a team member to finish a task, can recover from many failures without assistance, can collaborate with human to recover from a failure that the robot cannot solve alone. These cognitive robot abilities are enabled by using model-based techniques. At the heart of these techniques are engineering models of how the robot works and models of how the robot's environment. Like I said, I don't do something like that, but I think it gives kind of a pretty good explanation of the overview of what you do. And I have to tell you, back in January, the great-grandson of the iconic Tuskegee Airman, Brigadier Charles McGee, he's a freshman in high school, 14 years old, and he was talking about using robots and using them, how they would integrate with humans in space. And he was referencing it to the moon and that type of thing. And he actually had that conversation, Jackie, with Professor De Leon. Went mostly over my head, but I was like, wow, 14 years old. And he'd already done a project in middle school about this. But anyhow, can you put in plain English what I just read?
Yeah, sure. So I would put it as, we're trying to make robots that are capable of doing things that humans are very good at doing. So as a human, when you enter a new environment or environment that's very complex, like when you're driving on the road, when you're picking something off your kitchen shelf, so those are the tasks that are very easy for you. But they're harder for a robotic system. There's a lot of reasoning that goes into that. And I think in general, like there's been a lot of great research done on like how to build robots, like the actual hardware to accomplish those tasks that are very agile. I'm sure you've seen drones. I'm sure you've seen all the cool robots that can do flips and stuff from Boston Dynamics. But those are very like human programmed from low-level scripts. And so we want to kind of be able to command these systems using, like you would talk to a human, kind of telling them a high-level goal to achieve, go here, collect this science, and that the autonomous system would figure out everything that it would need to do to actually achieve that goal and be able to sort of adapt if anything goes wrong. And kind of keep going with limited human interaction. And I think the thing that I'm really interested in and where I think this is really applicable is places where it's hard for humans to get to, hard for humans to communicate with things. Like I do a lot of research in the under ocean exploration. And it's hard for humans to get down there to do research. It's hard to communicate with vehicles that are down there. So anything we send down there has to have smarts on its own to be able to adapt to currents and, adapt to the science that it's collecting. And so that's what we're trying to imbue these systems with a lot of those kind of human behaviors.
Yeah. So, Jackie, one of the things, and this is carrying over with what Marlyse is saying, the first manned mission is going to be to the moon. And one of the things that I've talked about in previous shows is that there's things that need to be set up on the moon to function and do the things, the experiments, et cetera, and so forth. And also in preparation to use the moon as kind of a launching base, if I've been understanding things correctly, to go further out into space, like to Mars and things like that. How do you look at all of that with what you do?
Yeah, so we're trying to get prepared to go to deep space, right? And a lot of these systems that we have need to incorporate a lot of the automated systems that you were just talking about. However, the human brings that aspect of like we can make decisions at an instant and based on what we see, what we smell, how we feel, which the robots might not be able to do. However, humans also will need more supplies, more the life support systems, more food, so that they can continuously live. So there's a balance there on how much we take away the human aspect from these missions, or we merge them, that idea of helping the humans to do their jobs. And however, we also need to be aware of what risks those systems introduce, right? For example, in the International Space Station, we brought in the past the RoboNet, a very state-of-the-art piece of work, and maybe some of my colleagues might hate me for that, but it was not well thought out from the operations part, because instead of helping the human, it created more problems, and we needed to shut down move the cameras a lot so that we can see where it was going. It couldn't cross the hatches from one module to another, and it required the human to help the robot when we really wanted the opposite, right? And those are things that we think about those during the design phase, so we can minimize that risk going forward. I think the human aspect also adds more risk to any mission, That's a given. We make mistakes, but that's why we want to plan ahead from the design stage, even from before, right? When we put the request for proposals, that it needs to be accounted for throughout the mission life cycle.
So I think I have a couple of perspectives on that, and I would love to hear what Marlyse has to say about the studying and the research to improve artificial intelligence and the use of robots for these things. But I go back to, if we look at a couple of things, for example, the recent landing of the Perseverance on Mars. And that was actually a really great demonstration to me of both human and automation, or robotics, because there were a lot of things that, as you watched Mission Control handle things regarding the approach, the approach landing, descent and landing, the EDL, the approach, descent and landing to Mars, but then it was also doing things itself. And it was figuring out things, it was making adjustments, it being the rover, or the vehicle that took the rover to the surface of Mars. All of these things were kind of autonomous. So it was a mixture of autonomy, and then also there were, if I'm understanding it correctly, there were instructions that were also being sent. Thing about it is, I think it was a 21 or 22 minute delay. So if you send the instruction, you better be ahead of the game on it, because it's going to take a minute for it to get there and then for it to react and that type of thing. But I bring that up in terms of, you were talking about the ISS, the International Space Station, and it's the same thing. There are certain things that the space station is capable of and things related to that. And then there's still, I mean, you used to be, I believe, I forget what the position was, but a controller.
Flight controller. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, for ISS. So that means that, well, you can tell us what it means.
Yeah. I was a flight controller. We have different positions that support the operations of ISS, and I was in the operations planning group. It was kind of an integration role where we weren't the experts on one specific system, but we needed to know a little bit of everything so that we can put it together in a nice format for what was going to happen during each mission day. And that was for the astronaut activities, for the ground control activities, and all that. So part of the coding that you were referring to, of like what commands are going to be sent, those are some of them are pre-scheduled, and we know when they have to happen. There's specific times for that to happen, when it ends. Yes, they can be considered automated because we pre-program them, but we need to send that signal, right? We need to send that command at some point. Then we, as the humans. So it's really a human in the loop process, right? We write the codes. Making it easy on ourselves if we need to update it, it's one of the things that we do for human systems integration too. And the whole idea of and I don't think a system can operate on its own without going back to the beginning where a human really developed that. I think we're getting there, and we're going to need more of those systems as we go further into deep space. The crew also will have to act autonomously when they're far. They cannot wait that amount of time that you were talking about for hearing back from ground for a decision, and then or for a question, and then waiting for the decision is too long. We're using the International Space Station as a testbed to test some of the tools that can be used for deep space. One of those projects that I worked on was on the crew autonomous scheduling test. And it was basically a tool where we allow the astronauts to go and modify their schedule, because right now they're very dependent on what we tell them to do and the resources that we provide for that. And we have to meet a lot of constraints and regulations that sometimes they are not aware of, because they have too many other things to worry about to do their activities while they're in space, right? So those are things that they're going to have to do on their own, but having those tools available for them to make those decisions are key aspects that maybe if some of you that are watching are interested on that, that's where we need you.
Yeah, that's really good that you bring that up, and I want to expand on that for a second. But I wanted to go back to Marlyse just in terms of, because Marlyse, you brought up a great point about deep ocean exploration and how you do that with AI autonomously and with robots and that type of thing, and deep space, which is pretty much the same thing with the added factor of the delay of the signals going back and forth. And what can you tell us about that? And what kind of things have you been working on in recent times with regard to this type of technology?
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that. Actually, one project I'm working on right now with JPL actually is to kind of do sort of a very preliminary sort of technology demonstration for how we might do an information science-driven autonomy for an asteroid family mission flyby. So in this case, we would be, the proposed kind of mission architecture would be doing a flyby of a large asteroid body, which is farther than humans can go currently. And the challenge is that we don't have high enough resolution on Earth to really know what craters on the asteroid we want to image. So we want to use onboard autonomy to be able to make those sorts of decisions on board when we get there, and not have to wait for, it's a flyby. It's only, a few minutes to an hour. So there's not a lot of time to wait for data to come back to the ground to make those like important science decisions about which craters are really important to get the science data that we need. So we're sort of envisioning a multi-spacecraft architecture where you have a couple spacecraft that are scouting ahead to give more information, and then a larger spacecraft that really has the instruments that we need to get the key science measurements. In this case, we're measuring ice content. The data transfer back between the small satellites to the large spacecraft allows large spacecraft to then make a decision on the fly of what craters on the asteroid are really going to be important for it to image. And so that's one kind of aspect of the type of onboard autonomy that we want to demonstrate. And additionally, we want to be able to have a system that can factor in not only just the science, but like the operational risks as well. These spacecraft have resources, they have power constraints, they have data constraints, they have trajectory constraints, and so the autonomous system has to be able to reason about all of that in addition to the science and make those sort of risk-reward trade-offs to ensure that the vehicles are being safe while still gathering the science that we need.
Yeah. So Marlyse, one of the things that we are trying to do with this program is inspire the up and coming generation in terms of all things aerospace, and you're actually part of that generation. You're working on your doctorate. You're actually part of the generation of people that are wanting to get into doing what you're already doing. How did you end up at MIT? MIT is considered the preeminent school of technology, and so it's fantastic that you're there. But how did that come about?
Yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles. I was always sort of a math science kid. I think what got me interested in space actually was I'm a big sci-fi person. I love sci-fi shows, sci-fi books. My dad and I would read and watch sci-fi together, and I thought it was just the coolest thing to be able to like envision exploring kind of deep space. So I think that I had always been interested in math and science, and I guess I was a little bit more advanced than others in high school. Potentially. I did, so when I was applying to schools, I was looking at, schools that had strong math and science. That's what I was interested in, specifically schools that had aerospace programs, because that's what I wanted to do.
MIT has strong math and science?
So, I mean, I think, part of it is hard work, a little bit is luck. And that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah. So while we're talking about the education part of it, let me go back over to you, Jackie, and ask you. So Jackie, you went to Rutgers. You got 2 degrees there. One which I find interesting is coming from Peru, but you got a degree in Spanish translation, I think. Right. Yes. Along with a degree in what was the other one?
The mechanical and aerospace engineering.
Mechanical and aerospace engineer. But my point is this about that, is that Rutgers, then Embry-Riddle, if I'm remembering correctly, and then Georgia Tech. How did all of that come about?
Yes. So for Rutgers, it was in New Jersey, and that's where I came to the United States. So that's where our family is. And when they're looking for the aerospace part, and it was within the mechanical department. So I'm glad I did that joint program, because it was, you need to know the mechanical part to do aerospace. I think where we take a lot of the basics from that degree. Maybe you're asking about the Spanish. Why Spanish? I already know Spanish, right? So exactly. I think one of my frustrations was that as I was learning my undergrad degree in English, when I was going back to Peru, I wasn't able to communicate with my people in my native language what I was doing. I was also interested in traveling. So I said, what if I just continue with Spanish translation and interpretation is different from just knowing two languages. There is a technique that we need to understand, idiosyncrasies, and we need to understand the customs, the words that each country has. And it's not just Spanish for one country, right? Each country has their own idioms too. So, then that prompted me to do that, and I said, well, let's travel while we do that. That's a recommendation that I will give also to students, that while you're in college, if you have the opportunity, do study abroad. You can take the same classes that you will take in your home school in another country and get credit for those. And I was able to go to Mexico for one semester, and then to Spain for another semester. And my weekends was just traveling around the countries.
You got as much exposure as possible.
Yes. So I think that really helps to see how the education is in other countries, because then you can also relate to that and open your mind to the different opportunities that are out there too.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk with both of you about is inspiring that next generation, and we do this every show, but everybody has a different answer when I have guests on about how to go about it. So what do you guys recommend in terms of, a young person? For you, Jackie, it can be any young person, but you probably inspire young Latinas and that type of thing. And what are your recommendations to them if they're showing an interest in space exploration, in aerospace and that type of thing? What kind of advice do you give? I know you do some speaking engagements and things like that. So what do you tell them?
Well, tell them that different things, and I think it's more important for you and talking to the girls or our audience, for you to make your own path, right? When you listen to these speakers and Vince's guests for all his programs, and that's a great initiative, by the way. Thank you, Vince, for doing this. It would have been nice to have that when I was in college, in high school, for example, right? What's out there for me? And so I'll keep doing that. Those type of programs are very fruitful and helpful as part of mentoring too. You can use it for that part. I didn't have that. I had to find my own way, right? For who do I ask? Even in my high school, they were like, aerospace engineer, what is that? And that was back in New Jersey. And so if you're interested in something, go and find out. And the good thing, you have internet resources now, just be able to balance what you watch and select what kind of information you're watching out there. There's tons, but be able to select. And if you need help with that, let us know.
Sure.
But I think that investigate that the scientific method that we learn in elementary school, it will be useful for the rest of your life. For any problem that you have, any questions that you have, try to research, find out more about that. If you're not sure, ask. And have some hypotheses and test them. You can even, like if you're in college or just from high school to college, you don't have to have a specific degree or career in mind. Maybe you're still trying to figure that out, but test it out. It's part of the scientific method, right? Maybe go attend a class that you're interested in, and if that's of interest, you'll continue. And if not, it's okay. Try something else. Find that passion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's important to. I like to point out, and I usually guests point out at some part of the conversation that you don't have to be an aerospace engineer. In fact, you don't have to be an engineer to work in space exploration. There are so many specialties that are required from all aspects of it, that if you have an interest in something that you think may not be related, but you still are fascinated with space exploration and all the things that go with that, then, why not pursue that and find out what the opportunities are with your area of specialty. So, I've pointed out over the last couple of shows that were done in reference to the Perseverance that there are people on the team that were microbiologists, are geologists, and a whole bunch of other specialties that have nothing to do with the mechanics of the rover or anything like that, but yet are very important to the mission and that type of thing. How do you guys feel about what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I was also just going to echo some of the things that Jackelynne said. I really liked what she said about sort of following your own path. I think that there's no one type of like STEM person. There's no one set of activities you should do to get into whatever it is you're interested in. I think the worst thing you can do is not pursuing things you're interested in. So just like, following the things you're interested in. And like that could be different, like Vincent was saying, from what maybe you might traditionally think as what's required. When I was an undergrad studying aerospace engineering, I realized that I didn't love aerodynamics and I didn't love thermo and I didn't love materials, that what I enjoyed was coding and I enjoyed programming, I enjoyed algorithms. And so I had to sort of find my own way to get back and connect that back to aerospace. And so, pursuing what you're interested in, not just because it's what you think or what someone says that you should be doing. The other thing that I want to echo from what Jackie said is just staying curious. There are no stupid questions. Any question that you have is valid. And I think people in general, especially I think the aerospace community is really great. Everyone is so passionate about it and so eager to talk about it that almost anyone you email or message on LinkedIn, whatever, will be happy to talk to you or answer your questions.
When I was looking at both the background on both of you guys, and you both have some videos and things like that about what you do, the thing that I think is exciting with you guys is you're so passionate and excited about what you do. So it and probably doesn't even feel like a job to you. As a matter of fact, I think you, Jackie, are challenged with balancing home life and taking care of those children and then doing all the stuff that you love in terms of, I thought it was cute, by the way, that you said that your son reads as much as you do, because he's like, oh, that's what you do. Mom's always reading something. And read a book? Sure, Mom. No problem. We probably all wish we could get our kids to be that way. But I think it's really great that both of you, and I just wanted to see how you both look at that in terms of the excitement and the passion that you have for what you do in the industry. Either one.
Okay. Yeah. The passion comes, I don't know, it's something that motivates us to keep going, right? And in my case, any changes, the priorities change at each stage of life. And as you mentioned, I'm a mom of two children, and they are my main projects now, right? And I still address them the same way. And we have to do some planning for their education, and I have to see what things that they will need, just as a mission, right? What resources do they need? And maybe it's my engineering and analytical way to look at it, but they are projects, and we need to take care of them. So that they are my motivation now to continue the work, because I'm their model. They are watching me, right? The example as a parent, our actions speak more than words, and I kind of have to do it. Sometimes it's hard to get up or to continue studying. I'm still studying too, right? So I'm doing work during the day and at night studying. And it's like I'm tired.
You're working on your PhD
because they're watching me.
You're working on your PhD?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're doing that and full-time at JSC, Johnson Space Center, and a full-time mom and wife.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a full
many
plate.
times they tell us about this balance, right? Or work-life balance. And I heard this from a mentor early in my career. There's not really balance. It's more of a management, right? That you do. And at some point, one of the areas will suffer. I think like that part of priorities is something to look at. One of the questions that I get is that, like, how do you do it, right? And it's not myself. We always can do things as a team. And I have my team members, my husband, my parents. They always support me in those things, and now my kids. So as students, you guys look for that support system. So it might be your classmates, it might be your teachers or professors, and look for that support system. And yet there's going to be times where you have your education's higher priority, and other times it's going to be your work, and maybe other times your family. So
I think
but try to keep them there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the point you bring about managing versus balancing is wonderful, because that's really true. You really have to manage your life when you have several things happening at the same time. And bring it back over on the professional side. One of the common denominators that I see in the industry overall and space exploration is discipline, because you're working with so many factors and you're working with a team. That team can be a small team or it can be a very large team. And so, I remember having the conversation about the Perseverance Mars rover and the different people working on that. And there are people all over the world that have contributed to that project. So, there's to have people giving input on something and that collaborating or culminating into, one solid mission takes a lot. It takes a lot of everything, including a lot of discipline because I've also heard from people in the industry, it's specific to NASA and jet propulsion, there really isn't room for error if you can help it. You really don't. When you looked at that landing the other week when it was landing on Mars, if anything had gone significantly wrong, the whole mission could have just been blown out of the water. So the concentration and the discipline play a big part of that too. Marlyse, would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think something I'll add, and maybe Jackelynne will agree, is I think for most engineering things, the actual technical engineering is probably only like 30%. And the other is how you communicate with people, how you collaborate with people, how you present yourself, how you organize, how you manage everything. And the actual technical part is only a small piece. And there's a whole other kind of spectrum of other things that you have to do to get things done. Negotiating with people. It's really, engineering is about working with other people more than anything.
And that's really interesting to hear. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Marlyse. I think the collaboration part is always there, and they don't teach us those soft skills as much in engineering degrees. You
guys don't have collaboration classes in your schools,
right? They throw us into team projects and go and do it. But I think that those are aspects that sometimes a lot of colleagues also are challenged with that. And that's one of the biggest part also for our certification flow as we go through flight controllers to be able to communicate with the entire team in a concise manner and identify the problem and your possible solution. And that's what I learned as a flight controller too. But those are very important. Sometimes we underestimate those, but and things that you can do as students to build that, I think, is leadership positions that you can take maybe in societies or school councils, or for me, it was professional organizations that we had within college and currently too. One of them was the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, Society of Women Engineers. I'm currently more active with the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. So all of those also and take high school students and college students as members. So that's a way to participate and also to develop those leadership skills that you're going to be using in the workplace. And yes, that part, as Marlyse said, takes most of the time in our collaboration efforts in any.
Well, you guys are really hitting a nail on the head on that one. I think it's really important. And I hear that on my side of the industry in aviation, but it is key. And I've had, in fact, everybody I've talked to says that. They say that, yeah, the technical part you definitely want to know. And obviously you both are excellent at that, but it's also the ability to interact and to lead and to engage and that type of thing. But you just brought up something too, Jackie, that comes up frequently, and that is the importance of being involved in associations and organizations related to your field, because they do give you the opportunity to develop the skills. Hadn't really thought about it that way. I think about it more in terms of networking, but point taken, to develop your skills in terms of being able to do all of the things outside of just the technical aspect. Marlyse, I thought that was interesting to hear that from you as somebody that, does computer science, coding, and all those kind of things, that you look at that as actually being as valuable or more valuable than the actual technical expertise, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, I think sometimes pure computer scientists might undervalue those things, but I think successful software engineering endeavors are extremely collaborative. And the actual me sitting at my computer coding part of the time when I'm doing my research is pretty small compared to the time I spend talking with the people I'm collaborating with. We're developing algorithms together. We're trying to understand the problems. We're reading. We're doing, we're having discussions together. So it's never a solitary process, even in research and even in computer science.
Yeah, and you like speaking to young people as well about what you do and about the opportunities in the industry and that type of thing. What things besides what we've been talking about do you recommend or advise or tell them?
One thing, and I think Jackie kind of mentioned this, but there's a lot of resources for out there online for learning kind of anything that you're interested in. A lot of universities have a lot of their classes posted online. edX is a great resource for taking classes. The other thing I will say, which might be a little bit biased, but I think having a little bit of programming experience is a good thing. No matter what field you go into, a little bit of programming is typically something you're going to.
Everything's computerized now, right?
If you're a data scientist, you're doing some sort of analysis, you have to program that if you end up going into something like that. So I think having an understanding of that is useful.
Yeah, I think that's true, Marlyse. For my Georgia Tech classes, when I was doing my master's, every single class required some part of programming. We needed to do a project or homework about it, and it makes things easier. Sometimes you might spend maybe 2 or 5 hours working on this program, but then that's gonna help you to do a project that might take weeks to do in just a few minutes. So it's an investment of time at the beginning, but then it makes it easy for ourselves. Yeah, that's a good advice.
So I'm going to digress for a quick second and ask you something, Marlyse. You fascinated me when you talked about using the kind of robotic and autonomous technology for ocean research. And one of the things that caught my attention was the lack of the ability to communicate with something that you send way down deep into the ocean. Is that the same as space? Is it a delay, or you just can't communicate with it until it's back up?
Yeah, so it is communication through water that is challenging. I mean, water is a much more dense material than air. So you can't use radio waves or anything like that. Usually you use acoustics to communicate, like sound waves to
Right,
communicate,
like sonar.
but like sonar. But it's very limited on the amount of data that you can send using acoustics, and you have to be very close to the vehicle when you're communicating via acoustics. So usually what happens is the vehicles are on the surface. That's when we send sort of their mission to them, either via radio or satellite. And then when they're underwater, and we don't really know what's happening with them until they come up again. And there's been some fun challenges. We've had situations where things did not always go as planned. A vehicle will go broke sometimes. But that's one of the reasons why we want there to be, especially for those ocean missions, more onboard autonomy. And when we're going to places where you can't surface at all, like we have a project coming up where we're going to be going to the Arctic to monitor ice shelf movements. And so the underwater vehicle will be under the ice for weeks without being able to surface. So it really has to have its own smarts.
Are you going up there?
Decisions. No, I won't personally be going up there.
Okay, just curious.
Sending our algorithms up there.
I would tell them I'd like to stay at mission control back here and relay the information to me. I'm not sure about going to the Arctic. Marlyse, I'll start with you. So you're working on your PhD. What are your future plans? What are you looking forward to being able to do? You kind of mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to make it a little bit more succinct for our viewers. What's your goal in terms? I don't want to make it sound like that. That sounds like I'm asking a interview question. But what are your plans in terms of what you would like to do and be involved in as you grow in your career?
Yeah, so I think eventually I will end up back in aerospace. I've always wanted to work at JPL since I was little. So I would like to go back and work there eventually, hopefully. But in the short term after I graduate, I don't really know. I think there's a lot of great industries sort of starting to come about that are using way more autonomous systems. The self-driving car industry is a great example of there's way more self-driving car companies, autonomous warehouses. That's a lot of sort of on Earth things that are using the technology that I researched. So I haven't really decided what sort of intermediate industry is interesting to me, but I kind of want to maybe try something new. Yeah,
so real quickly, the autonomous warehouse stuff, I get that. The autonomous car, I'm still thinking about that because my thing about it, I'm not worried about the car and the technology. I'm worried about everybody else that doesn't have an autonomous car. So if you have a special lane for the car that can self-drive, fine. But I think if it has to do it amongst the human drivers, well, anyhow, I digressed on that one. JPL, obviously there's a lot of things going on there. So I think that's just growing, especially with our ramping up of space exploration and the technology that's being used right now on the Perseverance is absolutely amazing. Of course, I'm fascinated by the little helicopter and the design of that and how that works on a planet with a different atmosphere and different gravity fill and everything like that. So that's kind of cool. How about you, Jackie, in terms of, you've already done quite a few things and you're working on your PhD and you already have 4 other degrees, but in terms of what you want to do, is being an astronaut still on the table? And does that mean going to the moon and or Mars, or, what are you looking at?
Yeah, that's astronaut. Yes, it's still on the table. I have my application in. They were supposed to let us know who was in the last 100 this year, but I think they moved that to next year. So we'll see. I don't think that's much of interest for my children. They're like, no, don't do that. We just want you here. But we'll see as like I was mentioning before, priorities change, right? And as time goes by, that might go down a little bit. But I think I'm already doing the contributions that I propose or put as goals for myself of contributing to a space mission, and I wanted to work on a moon mission. So I'm closer to that with Gateway orbiting the moon, and now I need to get to the lunar surface somehow, maybe with the rovers that we have that having that experience with Curiosity. Continuing with that, I think my place now within NASA is I want to be able to influence a little bit more on this concept of human systems integration. The Department of Defense has been using it for a long time. It's the first federal agency that uses it as a formal process. We are starting with that at NASA.
Can you tell us real quickly what that is?
Yes. So human systems integration, as I kind of alluded to, want to make sure that all the systems, all the designs are taking into account the human as part of the design throughout the life cycle of the system. Because we don't want to repeat things that were successful programs like Apollo, for example, or Soyuz is still successful, but they designed the hardware first and it met the requirements, the technical requirements for it to work. But then the last added thing was the human. Let's add it there, how it fits. Here we're adaptable, right? We can accommodate. But when we're talking about deep space missions, we can't do that. We need to be thinking about the human and how we will react, how we will behave, and what the design should make us be more efficient in our work. And that's what we want. We want to send humans so that they can do the most work that they can during that small period of time. So if we don't give them all the accommodations that they need, they're not going to be able to perform well. So it's a paradigm shift still. We've been doing human spaceflight, right? But it wasn't a formal process. So it's recently added to the Artemis programs. And I'm in one of them that is developing in Gateway. I'm still trying to break that barrier, right, of what we used to do, things that used to be done in one way. Sometimes we're afraid of change. So I want to be able to continue do that for other programs and wherever it's needed to let them know that the importance of that. That will be my contribution to the agency in general.
Sure. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but any closing advice from you, starting with you, Jackie, to the next generation of aspiring young aerospace professionals?
Yes, my last message. Thank you again, Vince, for this invitation. Keep, for your students, keep looking at information and follow your interests. You will be finding that passion, and sometimes it doesn't come right away. So it's okay to eliminate things as you go on. Try out things and continue using your scientific method. Thank
you. And Marlyse?
Yeah, same sort of thing. Stay curious. You're already, if you're listening, you're already on the right path to getting to where you want to go. So. Yeah.
Well, listen, ladies, it's been great to have you. Yes, it's a celebration of Women in History Month, Women's History Month, and then International Women's Day that was on Monday and that type of thing. But it's just great hearing from two great professionals in the industry and the things that you guys are doing. And you're, even though you've been in it for a while, particularly you, Jackie, you guys are still at the beginning of, or the early stages of the things to come because of how technology is growing and all the things. We could have done probably another hour just about the technology and the different things that you guys do. So thank you both for being on board, and I wish you both the best with your careers and moving forward.
Thank you so much, Vince.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great to have you guys. Again, you've been listening to and watching All Things Aviation and Aerospace. My name is Vince Mickens from Private Air Media Group, and it's been a pleasure once again presenting some options, opportunities, and possibilities for the industry. We'll continue that quest next week. In the meantime, everybody stay safe and have a good one. Ladies, take care.